The Kawasaki H1 was the fastest motorcycle when it was launched in 1969, and this motorcycle single-handedly put the Kawasaki on the radar of motorcycle enthusiasts. The entire motorcycling world was stunned, because nobody imagined that Kawasaki could pull off something like this, as they only started building motorcycles just 8 years ago. In fact, the H1 was only Kawasaki's fourth model after the 250cc A1 Samurai, 350cc A7 Avenger, and the BSA-inspired 650cc 4-stroke W1. Early on in the motorcycling building journey of the company, Kawasaki realized two things. First, if they want to grow in the world of motorcycles, they needed to get a hold of the biggest and the fastest growing motorcycle market in the world, which is the USA. Second, in order to do that, they needed a motorcycle which simultaneously grabbed the attention of the buyer and shocks the entire industry. And the engineers at Kawasaki set out to do exactly that. The project was codenamed as N100 and had two non-negotiable criteria. First, the motorcycle has to be 500cc in capacity and should be able to make at least 50 horsepower. Second, it has to be affordable. Since Kawasaki was relatively new to the game of motorcycle business and had to make the motorcycle affordable to attract the potential buyers, Kawasaki went with a two-stroke engine. The engineers had two options. Either bore out the existing 350cc engine in the A7 Avenger to 500cc or build one from the ground up. They went with the second option. Kawasaki finally settled on a 500cc inline triple since it will be easier to make more power and will stand out among the plethora of twins existent at that time. One of the biggest challenges Kawasaki faced while developing this triple is keeping the middle cylinder cool. To deal with this issue, Kawasaki made the cylinder slightly inclined to the front and made the fins on the center cylinder head considerably longer than the fins on the other two cylinders. This trick has proven to be quite effective later, as the H1 wasn't known to have overheating issues. In the name of cost cutting, Kawasaki got rid of the rotary valve in favor of piston porting, and the air-fuel mixture was delivered to the cylinders via three 28mm Mikuni carburetors. The 500cc triple featured a CDI ignition system, which was the first ever offered on a production motorcycle. The motorcycle produced 60 horsepower at 7500 rpm and 56 Nm of torque at 7000 rpm. And the way this engine delivered that 60 horsepower was completely mental. This relatively crude engine was a force to be reckoned with. It didn't take long for the H1 to become the favorite among the regular people and in the drag racing scene. The impressive power output also made it the fastest motorcycle in the world. This helped massively to improve the street cred of Kawasaki as a company. But don't be mistaken to think that the H1 was some sort of jack of all trades. It's not. In fact, as motorcycle historian Mr. Clement Salvadori noted in the Guggenheim's catalog, Kawasaki H1 was one of the least useful motorcycles available on the market. Because the H1 was more of a one-trick pony. Besides the engine, everything else on the motorcycle was, let's just say, subpar. Take the chassis for example. It was a conventional thin-tube double cradle frame attached to the swing arm via sloppy plastic swing arm bushings. Beyond 6000 rpm, when the power is violently delivered to the rear wheel, the frame had a tendency to flex, especially in the early models. Kawasaki did address this issue in the later years. The drum brakes provided on both ends are equally incompetent as the chassis. The suspension on both ends was also nothing to write home about. But it was the corners that made the H1 genuinely terrifying. The rear biased weight distribution of 5743 made the H1 a nightmare in the corners, as it never really gave any feedback about what the front is doing. But that weight distribution also made the H1 a wheelie monster. Despite all the shortcomings, the H1 sold like hotcakes. And what was the reason behind its success, you may ask? Well, there are a couple of reasons for that. First one is the timing, being at the right place at the right time. The H1 came out at a time when the muscle cars were all the craze. And if you know anything about the muscle cars, they are basically built for straight line speed. Quarter-mile time was everything to these machines. Nothing else mattered. And with a quarter-mile time of 12.4 seconds, the H1 became a superstar in the drag strip. But the best part about this motorcycle, and the second reason for its success, is that you could have all that speed and bragging rights for just $999 US, which is about $8,200 US in today's money after adjusting for inflation. That's a fantastic deal, especially for a motorcycle that holds the title of world's fastest motorcycle. This psychotic personality of the H1 earned itself the rightful nickname of the Widowmaker. The H2 that followed the H1 was even more unhinged and also referred to as the Widowmaker. But the H1 will forever be remembered as the OG Widowmaker. What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. And as always, if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Or if you loved it, please consider subscribing to the channel. See you guys next time. Ride safe.